Welcome to Going Through Health with Gordy and Zed,
where wellness gets a fun twist. I'm Gordy Jenkins, a natural foods entrepreneur, and with me is Dr. Zed DeBout, our resident trained Stanford MD. We are former college swim teammates turned best friends, and now your guide to this crazy world of health trends and fitness hacks with a focus on getting the science right. Get ready for a wild ride. This is Going Through Health with Gordy and Zed. Today, we're rinsing off the soap from our bad breath episode last week. Didn't listen or don't remember? Hey, it doesn't matter. Today's a new show. And as always, and going forward, hello to our video viewers. I am in a very bleak looking room. We're going to start today's show off with the GTH Big Three Bangers of bad breath before we start the spin cycle and explore the great stink of London in a historical perspective. Next, we'll shine the science spotlight on a recent study that explores how medications like Ozempic, known for weight loss and diabetes management, might also reshape the heart itself, physically, not even metaphorically. And we'll dive into the surprising findings and what they could mean for our health before we wrap up with the Fastfire Questions. But before we take the time machine to the stinkiest time in history, let's rinse the soap off from last week, Dr. Zed. What are the GTH Big Three Bangers of bad breath? Do you like that, by the way?
Oh,
I haven't shown you. I haven't shown you that before. I forgot about that.
No, I love that. I was also laughing at how many dinosaurs are in
science, baby.
The stinkiest time in history. What is that? The day Gordy was born. Oh. Yeah, like, get in that ring with me and the bear. Why don't you?
Let me at him.
All right, so yeah, Big Three Bangers. Here they are of bad breath. So if you missed out last time, go back and listen to it. Would it kill you to listen to one more podcast?
No. I listen to them like 4 times each, so you should do.
The least you can do. All right, so number one banger, just briefly review understanding the causes of halitosis or bad breath. So bad breath, as we know, can significantly affect everything from your social interactions, your quality of life, if you want to zoom out. But most cases, which we identified, well, not us, but have been identified as originating from the oral cavity due to the bacterial accumulation on the tongue, on the teeth, that periodontal disease, those cavities, poor oral hygiene. And then, so those things all kind of come together or contribute to leading to the production of those VSCs, those volatile sulfur compounds, those rotten egg compounds.
I remember those.
VSC, yeah, you know me.
Yeah, the VSC, yeah,
Stinky
you know
McGee.
Me. Stinky McGee, the Irishman.
All right, but non-oral causes, so it's not just those oral causes. There's non-oral causes, and those can include systemic or conditions like respiratory infections, your GI disorders, even metabolic diseases, as well as those medications that can reduce saliva production. And then there's your classic dietary factors, so garlic, onions, alcohol, or smoking, and those can all contribute to our favorite transient bad breath.
All right, yeah, I remember that. Good, thank you.
All right, numero dos of the Big Three Bangers. So diagnostic approaches. This one was, you got a couple different options here. Some of them are more expensive and some of them are more invasive. So diagnosing halitosis can include the organoleptic test. Do you remember that from last time?
I do. That's when you basically ask the doctor you just go up to the doctor and just breathe on his face.
just no heads up. Like, what are you here for today?
Yeah.
Just,
he's
right
back again. Like, I'm here for the follow-up. I didn't ask for a follow-up, man. It's been 1 week.
Come here.
Come here, big guy.
But yeah, so that's the organoleptic test. Basically, this expert clinician subjectively grading your breath on a scale of how bad it is. And that is the gold standard and infinitely cheaper. You can even get a friend to do that for you, just kind of gauge things, than the halometer or gas chromatography. We looked up those prices last time.
Halimity Jane.
But yeah, just ways to measure those volatile sulfur compounds and gauge kind of the parts per billion. And then there's those salivary tests measuring kind of your salivary production and using various enzymes to measure that output. All right, so that's diagnostic approaches. And then 3. So these are kind of treatment and actionable steps for managing halitosis. There's a gamut of options, as they say, but the effectiveness, quality.
You threw yourself out there with that gamut.
I find
It's
that a
worth it, though. I
podcast.
like it.
I find that a podcast is the best time to use a word for the first time ever.
Oh yeah, we should start getting a sound drop for when someone uses one of us uses a word that we've never used before, because it happens. There's probably like 4 words every episode and like these words that we've probably read a ton of times, so it almost makes us seem dumber for not knowing how to say it, because it's like it's obvious. I've read about this my entire life, but still, it's the pernicious anemia conundrum.
All right, there's a gamut, as I was saying, of treatments. But no, so I think that the main takeaway is that you should really prioritize oral hygiene. That accounts for most of the cases of halitosis. So you're brushing, you're flossing, you're water picking. If you're fancy, if you're kind of bougie, Gordy, and you have access to a pressure washer for your mouth, as they are called.
Pressure washer for your... Yeah, I go to an auto shop.
Hit me, Daryl. But no, so cleaning the tongue daily.
Spray.
Oh, yikes. Well, I'm not going to do that again. But no, so all those hygiene methods to basically reduce that bacterial load in your mouth, your regular dental checkups, your welcome dentists, and that's kind of a way to really address underlying dental issues. And then additionally, you can consider, these are maybe the things you're least likely to want to do, but the old dietary and lifestyle changes, reducing you're smoking, you're eating stinky things, you're burnt mouse dung. Actually, no, that's good for you.
That's good for teeth.
That's good for teeth. But yeah, so, and then last thing for those with systemic causes of halitosis, so really just consulting with your healthcare provider and making sure you're appropriately managing those underlying conditions to then kind of result in cessation of bad breath.
Which is something we all are striving
If that's
for,
what
I
you
think.
want.
Yeah, if you want. I mean, whatever.
Hey.
It's a smell. No one said it's right or wrong. I mean, some people did. Some people do. A lot of people are talking about it. Lots of people talk about it. But yeah, it's good. Well, Zed, thank you. That was our rinse. Let me rinse. Let me. Give me. What am I trying to say here? Listen to the rinse sound effect.
Your water pick.
That was the water pick. That was the rinse. And Dodger said, you know what comes after the rinse? The spin cycle. Here's the sound. Yeah. That's a spin cycle.
That's spin cycle.
Yeah, that's a spin cycle. And after this week, and for this week, the spin comes in the form of a historical perspective. Hey, Shane, it's a going through health historical perspective right here. Picture this.
I'm still laughing at the image.
Oh yeah, it's a nice yoga class. There's some dinosaurs in there, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, it's yoga.
It's yoga. Picture this. It's the summer of 1858, and London is sweltering under a heat wave. The city's streets are bustling with the sounds of horse-drawn carriages and street vendors hawking their wares. But none of that matters because no one can focus on anything at all except that smell. Ooh, that smell. Coming from the River Thames.
Heat wave, perfect timing.
Yeah, yikes, thanks. The River Thames, the lifeblood of the city, has become an open sewer for centuries. It has been the dumping ground from everything from industrial waste to human contributions like number 1, 2, and 3. 3 is either barf or diarrhea, depending on what elementary school kid you ask. It's a nuance. Depends on region. You add an oppressive heat wave, as you mentioned, to the mix, and the river wasn't so much flowing as it was simmering, a fetid broth of filth, releasing a stench so unbearable it earned a name for the history books, the Great Stink.
At what point are you hot enough from the heat wave that you're thinking about still kind of dipping your toes in?
Like just the toes. Like, would it hurt?
Yeah,
Germs don't exist.
My toes in the fetid stink and my ass in the
That's what they sung about. Now, London wasn't exactly known for being a fresh-smelling place even before this. It was a city of coal smoke, crowded slums, and streets often slick with muck. Sounds nice, right? But 1858 was something special, even for London. Boy, do I still talk about that summer. 1858. As one newspaper describes it, the Thames, that one newspaper, they're not very trustworthy. In one newspaper described it, the Thames, in short, is a fermenting sewer of impure exhalations. That's a cool way to describe it. People walking near the river reportedly carried handkerchiefs soaked in vinegar to cover their noses, which didn't even help. But I bet they probably smelled like they worked where? Do you remember the set from the old body odor episode? You know what the answer is? The old singer is, you smell like you work at a apple cider vinegar factory. Oh. I bet they smelled like they worked at a vinegar factory.
Hey, people walking around carrying handkerchiefs soaked in vinegar. What is this? Gordy was just born.
In 1858, Zed, come on. Come on. The situation. Oh, man.
Sorry, Gordy's at Airbnb and apple cider vinegar factory.
Yeah. The situation was particularly dire for the members of Parliament. The House of Parliament sat right on the banks of the Thames, making them ground zero for the stench. In a desperate attempt to maintain their dignity and their lunches, officials hung curtains soaked in chloride of lime, which is, I think, like calcium hypochlorite, over the windows, hoping to block out the smells. Spoiler, may as well be a vinegar-soaked handkerchief, because it did not work, Zed. It didn't work. One MP, that's a member of Parliament, described the odor as a Stygian pool, reeking with ineffable and unbearable horror. You know what Stygian means, Zed? Do you remember that one from last episode?
I was going to ask you. No, I forget.
Stygian means like related to the river Styx. So basically it's saying it's like, you know, like where like, you know, in the underworld. So it's like the smell of like dead and death. So gross.
Not so bad.
Not good.
Oh, well, not good.
Chill out, Hades. Yeah, apparently it was horrible. Another person reportedly fled the chambers mid-session of Parliament, choking and retching, and it probably looked a little bit like me after eating a glob of Vegemite the size of a koala's clenched fist.
Yep, that's the official measurement.
That was the measurement. That was a koala fist of Vegemite. Right? I would say it's like a koala. And it hit like a koala fist right in the throat, right in the uvula. It went toe to toe like Ollie Frazier right on the uvula.
Like that.
Like that.
Like that.
So Zed, check out this little, see how this works, listeners. This might not work, but we're going to try this out. I'm referencing, see this, Zed, you seen that picture? It's a silent highwayman. It says, death rose on the Thames, claiming the lives of victims who have not paid to have the river cleaned up. Oh. So, yeah.
I thought that was I honestly thought that was a little Hades
Me on my birthday? Me on the day I was born? Is that what you're going to say?
Why?
No, it looks like it, right? It looks like a bunch of just dead bodies floating in the river and pay your taxes. He's just paddling on through. But we're not going to have any idea if that worked or not until we publish this episode. So fingers crossed on that one. But back to Parliament, debates stalled, attendance dropped, and even Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli couldn't handle it. Even Benjamin Disraeli, Zed, our better listeners just drove off the road in shock. No, not Benjamin Disraeli.
and he was the obstetrician when Gordy was born.
Dang it! Dr. Disraeli does not deserve this. Faced with this olfactory assault, he declared, something must be done, but in an English accent. Problem solved. That's all you got to do, Zed. I like how that quote like somehow endured. Like something must be done. Like wow, what a visionary. Like wow, someone do something. Wow, Benjamin, good.
I declare bankruptcy.
For sure, it has that vibe. Now, at this point in history, the prevailing belief was that bad smells or miasma caused diseases like cholera. This theory was so widely accepted that people genuinely thought breathing in the Thames aroma could kill them. I think we've talked about the miasmatic theory before, but how like it's close, right? Like, you know, they're like onto something. Like there's something that you don't see that's affecting you, but you know,
something in the air.
Something. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Yeah, and so they weren't entirely wrong. Cholera was indeed rampant, but the culprit wasn't the smell; it was the water. Which I don't know. Just like thinking, this doesn't make sense to me. Like for example, you see rotten meat, Zed, like smells bad, right? But you don't get sick necessarily from smelling it. But you would probably see someone get sick from eating it. I just don't know how is there not like how is. Like how many? Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, why is the smell of certain things like which are a lot easier to prove and a lot easier to isolate? Like, you could have someone smell rotten meat and then eat rotten meat. The person that smells it is probably not going to get sick, and the person that eats it is going to get sick. Like, how do they not like draw the connection?
Why aren't they doing more intuitive experimentation?
Yeah, a little A/B testing. Is that because the scientific method didn't exist yet?
No, I think it's
or did it
English?
Oh, they're just on that Parliament time. 4 years earlier, Dr. Jon Snow, not the Game of Thrones guy. I haven't seen it. I haven't read it. I honestly just know that's his name. I didn't want to get my co-host
at the end.
Is that just all right? He's a wizard, though, right? That counts as your wizard credit with an asterisk.
The Thames is coming.
I bet the people that know the show are like, yeah, that's good.
Oh yeah, that'll hit.
That'll hit. So Dr. Jon Snow, he had proven that cholera was waterborne by tracing an outbreak to a contaminated pump. Sadly, though, Snow passed away in 1858 just as the Great Stink proved his point in the most spectacular way possible. I think that's funny. It's like, unfortunately, he died before the Great Stink. Like, oh man, that sounds great. Sorry I missed it.
Was it from cholera, or what did he die from?
I think probably cholera. I think it's what everyone just died from, smelling the Thames. So the stench was forcing people now to confront the reality that the city's failing infrastructure was the issue, and it wasn't just unpleasant; it was now deadly. And so Jon Snow couldn't even give you the "I told you so" that he would have loved, being so right about this. He just died, and the world got stinky, and sucks. It's not the way that you want to go. But the hero of our story is Joseph Bazalgette. Bazalgette, the chief engineer of London's Metropolitan Board of Works. And I would put a picture, but I don't know if it works yet. But next episode, you could expect that I'll be putting a picture of his mustache because, boy, he has a really good mustache. Then he's like an engineer. You can tell he's an engineer.
I knew that before you even said it. John Bazalgette, definitely.
Yeah, that's such a mustache name. Oh yeah, you're right. Oh yeah. Well, Bazalgette proposed a radical solution, a massive network of underground sewers to intercept waste before it could reach the Thames. Wow. It was an ambitious plan involving over 80 miles of main sewers and 1,100 miles of street sewers. And these sewers would carry the city's waste downstream to treatment facilities far from London's population centers. And Zed, if you want to get things done, it seems like you got to make people uncomfortable. You got to make the decision makers uncomfortable. It seems like, got to stink it up.
Getting it done. Yeah.
Oh, Basil getting it done. Oh, I hope he said that afterwards. Parliament was desperate to escape their aromatic nightmare, so they immediately just proved the project. It's like, go for it. It's amazing what the threat of vomiting on your colleagues can do for political cooperation.
I took that away in case I can use that. Just smell as a motivator.
Right. So construction began in 1859 and lasted over a decade. The scale of the project was staggering. Entire neighborhoods were torn apart to make way for the new infrastructure. And if it's like London, 1850s, it's probably just tearing down a bunch of orphanages and factories with big smokestacks, because that's what I think of in 1850s London. Something like some Charles Dickensy.
Yeah.
For sure. All the orphanages. We'll start with the orphanages, and then we'll work our way towards the river.
And then the theaters.
Then we'll hit the theaters. Workers dug massive tunnels under the city, battling unstable soil, floods, and even explosions. And at one point, the project faced financial trouble. And the rumors swirled that Bazalgette's plan was too expensive. But
Bazalgette, a lot like the Big Dig. Sorry, I'm just going to bring Big Dig vibes. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it ended up being like, hey, we like this now. It's good for us. But yeah, he was a visionary, though. So he had designed already the sewers to handle a population far larger than London's at the time. And his foresight actually paid off to the point where his system is still in use today. Like, I feel like we could really use a Bazalgette right now,
Yeah, for all these infrastructure projects.
For sure. And just like getting stuff done and like thinking ahead of time, not just like trying to do it now, but like thinking about future people, like who he won't, get to enjoy the shade of the tree he plants, but he'll still plant it anyway,
Where did all the good basilgates go?
Where'd all the good basilgates go? I don't see them on the TV shows. So basilgate's work didn't just solve the immediate crisis, it changed public health forever. London saw a dramatic reduction in cholera cases, proving once and for all that clean water was the key to stopping the disease. The success of the project inspired similar efforts in cities around the world, making Bazalgette a global sanitation hero. Badass global sanitation hero.
Also the best kind of hero.
Global, everyone's down. Sanitation, clean, awesome.
Yeah.
Hero. Or Euro. Is it Euro?
It is Euro. Batman kick rocks.
And what about the Thames, Zed? Well, today it's actually one of the cleanest rivers running through a major city. A lot of stipulations on that one, but hey, still, that's something to be said about it. It even supports wildlife like seals and salmon, creatures that would have been unthinkable creatures. What is that creature? It's a seal and a salmon.
Oh.
The creature, it's a fish and a seal. Now, those creatures, they're swimming all over the place, and they're swimming in the gross water. That's what they sounded
London
like.
for you.
That's London. That's London. The Great Stink is more than just a tale of woe and stink. It's a reminder of what happens when we neglect infrastructure and scientific evidence. It also shows how even the most odious problems can spark innovation. After all, it took one of the worst smells in history to create one of the greatest engineering feats of the 19th century. So the next time you flush a toilet, pour a glass of clean water.
Not gonna happen.
or stroll along a picturesque riverbank. Take a moment to thank the Great Stink and the genius of today's GTH MVP, Joseph Bazalgette, for sparing you from a world of unimaginable smells. And no cholera. I have not had cholera. Have you ever had cholera?
No, not yet.
Well, thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Joseph Bazalgette. Not yet, yeah. Maybe in the next 4 years. So thank you for listening to that. Oh, what you got, bud?
That was so fun, man. Truly MVP Bazalgette. We could have used him for the Olympics in Paris this past
I know,
year.
I was
feel
thinking
like.
that.
Yeah, the triathletes could have used a Bazalgette.
They
Bazalgette with the
could've.
baguette.
Baguette's cousin is Bazalgette. Last name Get, first name Bag. Yeah, but all right, Zed, now it's time to move on to a little science spotlight where we shine a light on anything that catches our eye while going through health. So, Zed, did you come across anything this week that was worthy of our science spotlight?
Well,
Just wait 1 second. Sorry.
those are so good. It was my first time seeing all the images for the bumpers. All right, for the science spotlight this week, I dove into the crystalline waters of the Journal of the American College of Cardiology in a study called Semaglutide Reduces Cardiomyocyte Size and Cardiac Mass in Lean and Obese Mice.
Oh, nice.
And this was by Martins et al. In October 2024 issue. So yeah, this is a little less stinky, but still very interesting about the GLP-1 roles in cardiac muscle loss. So basically, your GLP-1s, those receptor agonists that are prescribed for things like weight loss and for diabetes, extremely having their moment in the zeitgeist right now. But yeah, glucagon, like peptide-1 receptor agonists, and one example, semaglutide. And so these are effective in reducing body weight, and they've shown cardiovascular benefits in clinical trials, but their use is actually associated in some cases with a reduction in skeletal muscle mass. So this can lead to things like exercise intolerance and potentially decreased quality of life, particularly in individuals with who are at risk for heart failure. But the researchers found this effect on cardiac muscle in the Kate mouses in the mouse models. And let's see. So yeah. So go ahead.
No, it's just wild. I just think it's so, these GLP-1s are just wild. Like they do it all. But like last week, I remember we were talking about the GLP-1's effect on asthma. I don't know. Is it concerning at all that we're finding out all these extra things that it does when it's already in the market, or is that just like do you think like just the reality of medicine and science? Because couldn't there be things that it's doing that are negative just like as they are positive? Like it's fascinating. It's just because it's so popular, so all the studies are all over it. Do you think that's why there's so much coming out and so much money in it right now?
Ozempic. All right, moving on.
That's why. Dollar signs.
No, there. I mean, anytime. So throughout history, I think we've talked about this in some episodes before. There's been these seemingly magic silver bullets that not only cure or kill werewolves, but also seem to be able to really effectively target weight loss or be these kind of panacea treatments. And then, of course, the longer it's prescribed and the more evidence we have around kind of follow-up effects and side effects and changes over time, you do tend to see this buildup of research supporting other less optimal outcomes. So no, we're in the middle of this boom of basically using these types of drugs. So yeah, it's going to continue to be a very dynamic space, and yeah, we'll see.
It's interesting, super interesting. Yeah, sorry, continue, please.
Oh, all right. So the researchers found that semaglutide not only reduced skeletal muscle mass, but that it also decreased cardiac mass, specifically evidenced by this reduced left ventricular mass and cardiomyocyte size in both the obese and lean mice models. So they found that this reduction in the mass, that ventricle and cardiomyocyte size, occurred without changes in gene markers for fibrosis or atrophy, which you might expect to see in those cases. And so this suggests that there's this direct effect on cardiomyocytes, which is wild.
Wow. That's so ostensibly, like if it's just so I can understanding it, is it basically saying like it's reducing the size of your heart without weakening it or like without showing that it's just the muscle atrophying? So it's, I barely understand just because it's seems like almost magical to be like having a reduction of it. Is there a downside, I guess, is what I'm asking? Like, do we know, how controlled is it?
So unclear on the downside. I mean, just intuitively, probably not a great sign if your cardiac muscle is experiencing this atrophy. And basically it's showing that there is this direct effect that doesn't seem to be secondary to underlying like fibrosis or other causes of atrophy. So it's specifically this drug which is having this effect. And so I mean, but basically the implication is that if there are these cardiac changes in patients, especially those with cardiovascular disease, it can be problematic and would need careful consideration. So yeah, definitely something that they're going to want to like do follow-up studies on and be aware of, especially for patient education and decision making, clinical decision making. But basically they follow up with this recommendation, which I think your question was getting at, but this recommendation for clinical monitoring. So given this potential impact of these GLP-1s on cardiac structure, they recommend that cardiac function and structure kind of be thoroughly evaluated, both in like clinical studies involving GLP-1s, but also as cardiologists in primary care continue evaluating whether these drugs are right for their patients who are trying to take them for weight loss or for diabetes. But yeah, basically, just intuitively, it's crucial for understanding the long-term effects of these medications. So that gets back to kind of the more or the longer we have the magnifying glass to these things, the more that tends to come up, and it's not all good.
Right.
So, and
that's fascinating.
To your
that's
point,
very fascinating.
Yeah, to your point, particularly in patients with or at risk for cardiovascular disease, any type of cardiac atrophy could be a huge problem. So basically ensuring the safe and effective use of these weight management drugs in regards to cardiovascular health.
Could there be any, like, when you get in like enlarged, I mean, I know a lot of this is so early, so we're just kind of speculating here, but with the enlarged ventricle, that could be a bad thing and like a stiffening of it, or, your apex root or whatever, and all those things. Could this hypothetically be in theory, could it be a good thing to try to reduce like excess cardiovascular mass that's like actually inhibiting proper cardiovascular pumping and stuff?
Yeah, kind of seasonally relevant. When the Grinch, his heart grew 3 sizes that day, and maybe he didn't want that kind of cardiomyopathy. Could he use semaglutide to kind of reduce his heart size? I suppose you could. I mean, yeah, that gets definitely off-label and untested, but yeah, who knows? That would be interesting.
Right now, the label for these GLP-1s seems like it's a blank label. It kind of seems like a tabula rasa of things that it's fixing. Kind of like last week we talked about Listerine being like, hey, gonorrhea, take some Listerine, have it. You're good. Clean your floor, whatever. Wash your car, Listerine. Wash your horse back then, sorry.
Yeah, diabetes, heart too big, too generous for the holidays. Yeah. Semaglutide. Yeah.
Well, geez. Well, that's pretty interesting. Let me hit you with one of these.
Now that's healthy.
I think that's healthy. I mean, I don't have that. Now I'm indifferent to that, and it could be scary.
That could be unhealthy.
But Zed, you know what that little bumper means? Because music is dead, video has killed the audio podcast star. Either way, until we have a producer, we're gonna go a cappella on the Fastfire Questions. So Zed, let's get rid of this nonsense of me talking because we need to get into the questions. It is time for our Fastfire Questions.
Gordy and Zed's Fastfire Questions.
They say it's raining questions on me. Zed.
That image is kind of how I pictured that one dance fever from our
from like the mass psychosis or the mass dancing. Yeah, for sure. Well, Zed, it's time for our first question, which is, would you rather?
Would you rather?
Zed, would you rather lose your sense of taste or lose your sense of smell? We'll do it for 1 year, and then depending on your answer, I'll make it harder.
So have like no taste like you, or
no taste.
Gotcha.
Like you're just super tacky.
I think. All right, so taste smell. I feel like I know they're connected, but I'm ostensibly you have the full sense even without the other one.
Yeah.
I think I just use taste a lot more frequently, or at least think about it, and at least get more enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
And hey, if I lose my sense of smell, no halitosis issues either for me or for others. I can be a halitosis patient's best friend, but I will never be able to be one of the clinicians who measures it subjectively.
No, you can never be an organoleptic doctor.
Organoleptic, yeah.
Organoleptic.
All right, I'm choosing keep taste, ditch smell. Who needs it? Smell you later.
I think when you're thinking like that, I think that's a smart way to think. Like, what are like food and stuff more than smelling? I think that we would end up being like, wow, I didn't realize how much more I use smell just to do everything. Like, just be like I wish I would have got out of that house that was on fire earlier.
That's something burning. That's true. Yeah.
Tastes good to me.
Is this toast burning?
Yeah. All right. Well, I like that. Well, Zed, now it's time for our next question, which is, which would you rather spend time with in a giant terrarium?
Which would you rather spend time with in a giant terrarium?
Wow, that voice almost sounded in my cadence. Weird. Zed, which would you rather spend time with in a giant terrarium? A person with bad breath that could only whisper. A person with come closer. A person with bad breath who could only whisper, or a person with body odor that could also only whisper. So, hey, I have body. Oh no, I'm whispering, but I have body odor, but my breath's fine. So it really comes down to, I think, which smell is worse. But Zed, what are you thinking? Which would you rather spend time with in a giant terrarium?
Two bad smells. Everyone's whispering. One's below.
I think that whispering might get to me first. I think that like, oh, quit that ASMR. Just stop whispering.
I think I'm choosing the bad breath because I feel like the BO would permeate more often, whereas bad breath person, they're probably closing their mouth some of the time, and they can't possibly whisper all day and night. I think I'm going in honor of our last episode and this episode. I think I'm going to stick with my bad breath best friend and ditch the BO.
I would totally do the opposite. I think the smell of bad breath is just like worse. Uniquely terrible to me. Yeah. You know, it's just I mean I don't like either, but like there's something like stomach turning about like a black tooth.
it's those sulfurous compounds.
It is. Those, what are they? VSCs? Yeah, you know me.
SVCs, you know me.
Sulfur,
VSCs, volatile sulfur.
VSCs. All right, yeah. All right, cool. Well, what would you rather, like, always have BO or would you always have bad breath?
Oh, yikes!
You seemed confident at first.
Yeah, I think BO. I'll put on some deodorant. Bad breath, I feel like, is a little more resistant.
I agree. It's a little more personal too.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like kissing versus a handshake. I guess. That is time for our final Fastfire question. The one that is not a question. It is time for Shock the Doc.
Shock the Doc.
Look at that. Look at you.
Is that Pliny the Elder?
That's Pliny the Elder shooting lightning bolts out of his finger. So I caught this last week or recently while watching the Cleveland Browns prepare for the game against the Denver Broncos. And the game was in Denver. And the Browns, they took this futuristic step right into an altitude simulation room at their practice facilities. And I thought this was cool. Why? Well, because Denver's air obviously is very thin. It's a legit game changer. So at high altitudes, oxygen levels drop, turning every point, sprint, cut, and tackle into a struggle, like trying to run up Everest with Joseph Bazalgette on your back.
Hey, no one I'd rather climb Everest with.
Yeah, he would have some solutions, though. He would be like, hey, there's stairs I built, just in case.
We got to figure out what to do with this waste.
Altitude rooms, they mimic this like high altitude environment by lowering oxygen levels to help the body adapt. But here's the twist: that true physiological changes, like boosting red blood cell production, takes weeks of exposure to really pay off. That's what got me thinking. Like, is Kadarius Toney chilling in a altitude?
Yeah, definitely him.
For like, yeah,
he's doing everything
he's taking
to
it
optimize
seriously.
his chance.
Yeah, he's taking it very seriously. But yeah, is it actually long enough, or is it just psychological? And it seems like maybe they're just probably aiming for more of a psychological edge on the short term, getting their lungs and their heads are just accustomed to the feeling of the thin air, even if it takes longer for the full benefits. But I still just think I think it's a cool little thing. I don't know. Have you heard of like workouts in them and stuff? Like I've seen like spinning classes in these rooms before. Yeah.
Huh. I haven't. I've seen the sort of masks that are supposed to limit sort of oxygen inflow. I honestly, I got a little bit of like a rush of not hydrophobia. What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know, claustrophobia?
Claustrophobia. When you were reading that, just imagining being in a room where they're slowly turning down the oxygen. Oh, nightmare scenario.
Oh yeah, you'd feel like one of one of the dogs, the liver dogs. Who figured out V12 for us.
Yeah, yeah. I'm one of those guys that's hooked on oxygen, I guess.
Well, Zed, thank you for being here, and thank you to the listener and viewer, as we call it, the watchers. Thank you to the watchers for watching Going Through Health with Gordy and
watching.
Please. They're everywhere. Watch and listen each week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. New episodes available early Monday morning. Watchers, follow us, rate, and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please give us 5 stars. Really max out that star meter. Follow us. Rate us. Did I just say that? Well, really, I really want you to follow us and rate us at goingthroughhealth.podcast on Instagram. Follow us. Any questions, concerns, listener mail, topics you want us to cover, throw us an email, GordyandZed@gmail.com, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. See you next week. And Gordy, take it easy on your Airbnb sewage infrastructure. Why don't you?
We'll see, buddy. See you next week.
Bye. Hey, this is Zed. This podcast is intended solely for general informational purposes and does not represent the provision of medical advice or the practice of any professional healthcare services. No clinician-patient relationship is formed. Nice try. And the use of the information provided or materials linked is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not meant to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should seek medical advice for any health issues they may have and should consult their healthcare providers for any such concerns.